Welcome to Wisdom Woman podcast. I believe that is in constant change and growth, not in perfection, that we find happiness. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking with top performance professionals about tools, techniques, new ideas on how to develop your communication skills, use your creative thinking, be a team player, manage your tasks like a pro, be motivated, become an expert on relationships, and a problem solver. Everything you need to be 5 stars in all areas of your life. My intention is to help you develop your skills and find balance between your professional and personal life. My name is Betina Pflug, and I hope I can be your trusted advisor. Hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to another insightful episode of Wisdom Woman. I'm your host, Betina Pflug, and today we embark on a journey through a topic that resonates with many of us, especially during significant life transitions: downsizing. It's a complex process filled with challenge and opportunities, and today's guest is here to shed light on how to navigate it with grace and wisdom. Our guest today is none other than Ann Brady, a remarkable author with a wealth of knowledge in real estate and downsizing. Ann has authored 5 real estate books, including Savvy Seller, Top Dollars, and she's currently working on her next book, Savvy Right Size Senior Transition for Life, which delves into the intrinsic of downsizing. Anne brings a unique perspective to this topic as she's experienced her parents' downsizing journey and recently embarked on her own transition from a big family home to a nomadic lifestyle. Anne has dedicated over 15 years of her life to helping clients resize into their most suitable next home. Beyond her writing, she's on a mission to build a global real estate business that empowers agents and brokers to create a life of legacy and truly love. So fasten your seatbelts as we embark on this enlightening conversation with Ann Brady, exploring the complexities and joys of downsizing during life's transition. Stay tuned. Thank you, Annie, for being here with us today.
Absolutely, Betina. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so
And it's
excited.
crazy that we used to live in the same town in Colorado, and now I'm in Australia, and we met just after I left. I can't believe it.
It's pretty crazy, but that's okay because I'm going to come and stay with you sometime in Australia. You'll be surprised when I show up for a visit.
That's so cool. We have so many things in common, and one of the things is really helping people in the life transitions. And you've been doing this for such a long time. Can you share a little bit about your background and what inspires you to write a book about downsizing during transitions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started writing my books as a tool and a resource for clients. And then along the way, I started seeing my own life woven through them. And it sort of became a way for me to create almost a memoir, right? So I've got my divorce book, my inheritance book, and then the right sizing book sort of came out of the fact that I looked around and realized it was the one major life transition that I'd experienced that I had not written about. So I decided to write my right size book when I realized I had that big gap in my book repertoire. And that's how that came about.
And what are some common life transitions that often prompt the need for downsizing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most common, let's face it, is we hear from people all the time who are struggling with, you know, family situations where mom or dad isn't managing to live safely in their home. And that's really what we think about when we think about a downsize home. But there's all sorts of other situations where maybe people want to move into a situation that just better suits their lifestyle. For me, my experience was that both my kids moved out, and I looked around and realized I wasn't enjoying the big suburban house and the lifestyle that came with that. So I decided to downsize and change everything. So it's a very broad spectrum of topics, and I love to support people through all of those concepts. That's one of the things that the book really brought out for me was an understanding of how many stages in life downsizing really can affect.
And downsizing doesn't mean that you're going to have less quality of life. And I experienced that recently, coming from United States, where everything is big, huge, cars, houses, everything, and then moving to Melbourne, close to city here. We had to downsize, but that doesn't mean we lost quality of life. Actually, we gained quality of life without having the need of taking care of a big yard, maintenance, and everything. So this episode is also intended to help you if you're moving abroad or if you're moving to another country and you're thinking that downsizing might impact your life. So we're going to cover all of that with Ann. And
Yeah,
how do you define downsizing and why is it important during this transitional phase?
so I guess that I would define downsizing as any simplification of your home and your things that is brought about to create a healthier, safer, more powerful life for you, whatever that looks like. And
And what
that
are some emotional challenges that people might face when it comes to letting go all the possessions and during this process of downsizing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really challenging to let go of things. We hold on to things because they reflect some part of our past, right? They might be a memory or something we have used when it made us feel powerful, or maybe we come from a family where letting go of things was just challenging. And so we hold on to things as a reflection of who we are, and at the same time, letting go of the things that reflect who we used to be can be really freeing in terms of helping us to figure out who we would like to be in the next phase. You experienced that in your recent Australia move, right? Like, you had to let go of some things and change the way you were living with your stuff. When our things are kind of managing our world, that then they're controlling our situation. When we control our situation, sometimes we let go of the things.
Yeah, I think in changing also lifestyle, having the opportunity to be your next self, it's so good. For example, I had a motorcycle in United States and selling my motorcycle and changing that, I said, okay, I'm not gonna have this lifestyle anymore. But now I bought a bike. I ride my bike and everybody ride bikes here in Melbourne. So you can change, you can always reinvent yourself.
Right. We
But
never know who we could be if we weren't this exact version of our person. It's kind of exciting and fascinating, actually.
and can you provide some practical tips for approaching the downsizing process with a positive mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the most important thing about downsizing is that we can come at it from a point of view of something we put off until they drag me from the house kicking and screaming, or we can come at it from a point of view where we're coming as a younger, more vibrant, healthier person, looking at how we would like to live into our next phase or several phases even of our life. And by doing that for ourselves, as opposed to waiting for our children to push us out of the house when they feel we can't live there safely anymore, we can establish systems and lifestyle and a living situation that can support us as we age, and also empower us while we're still young.
That's pretty
So,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah. What I did for my move, and maybe I can share this with some people, I bought this book from Mary Kondo, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And when I received the news that we are going to move to Australia, I just started reading the book and separating the things. And one of the things that she suggests is to have boxes in your house and just look at the things that you have and feel if this thing brings you joy or not. And then separate it in box. Oh, this really brings me joy. This don't bring me joy. And keep it aside for a while. So all those boxes of the things that didn't bring me joy anymore, we did a big garage sale, and it was really nice to repurpose those things that were important in one time in my life and weren't anymore, and having someone else using it and having the time to sell your things or giving away for people who really can use it and make it meaningful for you was a challenge, but was super important. Then we brought like a half of container here to Australia. And when we arrived here, we stayed 2 months in an Airbnb, just living with 4 plates, 4 glasses, just a pair of silverware and not many clothes because everything was on the container. And then I noticed that we could live with so much less. We don't need everything that we actually have. So when the move came, said, what I'm going to do with all this stuff? I don't need all of that.
That's awesome. I love that. What a great story.
And
Yes,
we
absolutely.
did. We opened the boxes and we removed only the things that we really wanted, not the things, and we kept everything on the garage. And we started doing the same principle. What brings us joy? What we can repurpose? And then we started really giving away to people that needed those things. And I feel so much lighter now. And I apply the rule. If anything new enters in my house, something needs to go. That's what because if you have a lot of storage, you start stuffing things all over, and soon you have to downsize again.
And soon you have to downsize again. I love that, Betina. I'm definitely going to remember that story when I get to that stage in my book. What a wonderful story. Yes, we for sure can live with less things. And I would not consider myself a minimalist by any stretch of the imagination. I have a giant storage unit where all my stuff, well, not all my stuff, I got rid of a lot, but where much of my stuff is sitting and waiting until I'm ready to come back to it. But for right now, right now I'm in Boston. I've been here for over a month now, and I live in Colorado. It's kind of where home is now. I don't really have a home anymore. But having the freedom to throw in, a handful of things into a backpack and hop on an airplane and just go be just me, it's fascinating to watch myself living in spaces. And when you don't have all of the things to clean up, you have a lot more time. It's pretty fascinating.
Yes, I decided to challenge myself. I put it a goal in my life. In 5 years, I want to go around the world for a whole year. And for me, this is making me freaking out. How can I live a whole year with a bag of 23 kilos? Can I do that? And I'm working myself mentally how to approach that. And obviously, it's nice for you to create routes, to have your own place and keep your things. So I plan to keep my things, but I plan also to experience this light life of just being and exploring the world and really seeing what's important to me. And once I come back, then establishing my roots in a place that I really love and go deep with my roots, but living with less. So I'm just trying to figure out how to live a year with a bag of 23 kilos. So many people do that, but I want to challenge myself.
Well, I might be on the road when you're doing that. One of my dearest friends, they spent a year traveling with backpacks, the mom and dad and their 3 daughters, and they did that. And they're currently off in Croatia and Egypt right now. So she's ahead of me again on this darn trip, and I'm trying to get the guts up to do it. So maybe we'll peer pressure each other a little bit.
Yeah, we decided 5 years because we want our both daughters to finish the university, and we are planning to travel as a family too. Hope it will work out. If they don't get married or find a boyfriend, or maybe we need to take some boyfriends together with us.
Yes, take the boyfriends and girlfriends along. I've got 2 young adults, and part of my journey is that I'd like to do my traveling now before they start having babies, because I figure I'm probably not going to disappear from the world for, 6 months, a year when I've got grandbabies back at home. That's going to be a much harder choice to make. So, yeah, definitely.
So when talking about people moving from one country to another as an expat, how can downsizing help expats specifically as they move from one country to another? Do you have any ideas of how can they do this process?
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I've never moved across country, but I have moved across to another country, but I have moved across country here in the US multiple times. And taking your stuff is very expensive and very complicated, especially if you're doing it with professionals. I know friends who have, traveled over to Hawaii or across to Europe, and they ended up getting rid of a lot of things. So I think preparing yourself to sort of let go of some of your life and the things that were holding that together so you can go and recreate your new life is going to be really powerful. And again, I think so much of life is about mindset. If you approach it as getting rid of all the things that you value, that's going to be a much harder transition than if you come at it from a point of view of, I'm going off on a new adventure and what I'm gaining is far greater than the things that I'm going to let go of. So letting go of the things, and obviously finding space for the most precious items, as you were talking about, do you love this? I love this. I need to have this. But even then, I think that you'll find that your weight limits come up really, really quickly. And sooner or later, we have to get rid of things that you love, even when you wish you couldn't. And that's part of the journey when we are letting go and downsizing.
Yes, I like your idea of maybe using temporarily a storage place. And I can tell a story that happened with a couple of friends of us 6 months prior to our move to Australia. A couple that we were very good friends of, they received a proposal to move to Saudi Arabia from United States. And I was helping my friend downsizing, seeing what's important. And she rented a really small storage place with everything she needed to start a house in the United States. I said, I need this. If I want to come back, I have everything to restart my life. This was so important for her to feel secure that she had like an anchor in the United States, that she could ever come back. Was very important for her emotionally. She was able to downsize, but have at least a minimum things. But I was able to talk with them. They came to visit us after 3 years, and they were wondering what they're going to do with those things because they don't need anymore. They rebuilt their whole life in Saudi Arabia, and they're very happy there, and they don't need anything that they said, we're just paying just to have it. We need to
Just
get rid of it. But if it's emotionally attached or something that's important for you to feel secure, you can do this as a transition. But be aware that you will be a new person once you move abroad. You will be someone else, and it's okay to let go, isn't
I
it?
love that. I love that, Bettina. You will be a new person. You will be a new person. I think that that is something that we forget sometimes when we get settled into our big family home and we're just comfortable there. We are who we are. But without all those things, we go become somebody else. And so what a fun experience for them to go and realize that all of the things that they had set aside, that little safety net, that they didn't need that they'd moved on, they'd succeeded and found a new home and a new life. How exciting. I love that.
And do you have any strategies on for determining what items to keep, donate, or discard during a downsizing process in your experience?
I think that one of the most important things is to make sure that you're allowing the people in your world to have a say about what might also be important to them. One of the nice things about downsizing, when we're younger and have more options and more space in our head, is that we can look at the things and understand that giving them away or offering them to the people in our life does not equate to us kind of being dead or at the end of our life, right? And so if we can offer the people in our world the opportunity to come and say, I've always loved that, or that is really precious to me, I would love that. It gives us the opportunity to put those items aside, whether they're going into storage or going home with a new owner, somebody who can and love it at this point in time. That helps to make sure that things don't get donated or lost or thrown in the trash that somebody was really hoping to find and have someday. So that's good. I know in my own experience with my own recent downsize, both my children wanted to be involved. My daughter definitely, she's far more nostalgic than my son, but so she really wanted to be involved. And they're both in the middle of their educations. She's working on her master's and he was in the middle of some EMT certification items. And they didn't really have time to support me with the going through this stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I got myself a big storage unit. And I was like, you know what? I will come back to this later when they have more time and they have more sanity, and I can have the support of the people. So having the support of your people is important. And, just going through those items, figuring out what you love, figuring out what you will never use, what you might use down the road, and then taking advantage of your resources, things like charity donations, trash pickup. Um, yeah, there's tons and tons of resources. Even things like estate sales can work for families to help. And we often think of those as being something when somebody has passed away. But if you're ready to have your things moved out or sold, they will come in and take care of all of that while you're still alive and kicking.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yes, I agree with you. Like inviting people that really like and have shared the life with you, that would like to have your things. For example, I had my whole coaching office in United States, and I was coaching someone who wanted to be a coach, and she bought all my furniture. And they said, that's so good. She's gonna recreate my coaching office. Another friend took all my plants to her house, and a couple that we always went out for dinner wanted a big wine glass wine that we had. So it was really nice giving things that were meaningful for each one of them. And I think sharing your phase, like everything that you're doing with people you love, it's a nice thing, and doing
That,
together, so
that
don't feel by yourself.
That's so fun. That's so fun. I think that one of the things we really don't do very much in our modern culture is acknowledge that downsizing is actually part of life. We collect things and we start when we're young, and then we keep them and we keep them and we keep them. We add more things to our life. But really, it, letting go of some of those things as we leave stages behind frees up space for more things, and we sort of forget about it and we get busy. So having the opportunity to have people in your world help take the things that are precious, that certainly makes it easier, take some of the sting out.
And how do you think downsizing can impact mental and emotional well-being during this transition?
That's a really complicated question, Bettina, because so many families and people do go through the downsizing process during a time of health crisis. A parent who has some mobility challenges or some memory challenges. And so now we're dealing with a family situation that's already complicated. Stresses are already high. Money is probably a concern. And so that's a very different conversation and a challenge. And my best suggestion on that is just to remember to be compassionate and patient, because at the end of the day, all any of us ever really want is to be seen and heard. And autonomy is a big thing. So the more that we can be kind and have an awareness of that person that we're trying to help and their autonomy needs, in spite of the fact that they may not have the same autonomy that they've had in the past, we can still honor them by moving slowly, by asking questions, by finding out what their priorities are, by letting them choose their most important things. So that helps in a situation more like that. In terms of moving into a downsize more similar to mine and yours, where somebody's looking at maybe making a life change, man, I gotta tell you, I just think that crazy people like us, when we're ready to go and off on a new adventure, we get called to it. We're ready, and there's just something saying, it's time, you're ready, and let's make this happen. And so moving things out is emotionally tiresome, but it's also exciting.
I agree with you. There is something that I always teach my clients is about the 7-year cycles of life. Rudolf Steiner is a philosopher who studied that a lot in Germany, and there are several schools who follow his teachings, and he explains that we have big changes in our lives every 7 years. So you can see a kid normally around 7 years is changing our attitudes. On around 14 is when we start puberty, 21 when we start our professional life mainly. So from 21 until 42 is the time where we are most attached to material things, where we try to accumulate, where we were working hard to get things. And after 42, there is a big trend for us to start to connect back again to our spirituality. That's when we realize that we don't need material things to keep growing, and then we start reducing. So paying attention of this 7 year cycles of life and how this is impacting our life, it's huge. So if you have kids and you can do your transition with your kids, that's a very important thing. My mom recently downsized. My father already passed away, and used to have two houses. One was in the city and another one was in the mountains. And it was really, really hard for her to maintain and keep both houses. So she decided to move to her house on the mountains, and selling everything was very painful. But because we were all together, we did this as a family, was hard, but it was a very important move for her to do. Why? She was okay. She was good. She had good health. So we had to push a little bit for this to happen, but supporting her through the whole process was very important. And now she's much happier with less complication in her life, less things, a lighter life that allows her to come here to Australia, to travel to Europe, to really enjoy life without feeling, the weight of taking care of both houses. So having a kid support is super important, don't you think?
I do think so. I also think that it you mentioned it just being good for her to move into that next stage of life with all of those things taken care of. I definitely see this in my clients where they have a sense that they want something simpler. They're looking for something simpler. And it's interesting how sometimes it's the kids who are pushing against it. But mom, this is the big family home. We want our kids to spend time here, but that's not always in, mom and dad's best interest or mom's best interest, right? So I often see that the children push against letting go of the big family home. So that's another important thing to note is that our parents are going to go through this at some point in their life. And you might as well encourage it when they show those readiness signs, because sometimes when we have readiness signs, we will lose them and they will be gone. And then you'll move into the next phase and your parents won't be ready for that downsize the way they are. So I recently had a client of mine and she had a big family home and she was looking into moving into a more of a condo style lifestyle. And she was so excited to live within walking distance from the shops and the coffee houses and things like that. And you could just feel that her son was getting dragged along, kicking and screaming, and he was doing everything he could to complicate this fairly straightforward process for his mom. He wanted to continue going to see his mom where dad had lived, and dad was gone. So it's complicated for everybody, but letting those transitions come when they feel natural is in everybody's best interest. And what I always say is, do you want to be forced to live someplace? Like if you want to move, do you want your mom telling you where she should move? If mom wants to move into something downsizing, you're going to tell her where she should live? That's uncomfortable.
I agree. Yes, every change is an opportunity for us to grow and
Mhm.
self-discover ourselves. How this happen in your life? For example, how downsizing created opportunities for your personal growth and self-discovery?
Oh my gosh. Well, like I say, when my kids moved out, so my kids moved out in October. I joke that I must have been a really big bitch in September, excuse my language, but it didn't work out that way. They just both found their points where they were ready to move out. And my situation is I am divorced. I live on my own. I have a sweetheart. He lives on by himself, and we're happy that way. We enjoy our independence, but he's also probably going to retire here in the next year or two and run off to Ecuador or maybe Puerto Vallarta or maybe the whole darn world. And while we haven't really figured out our own process and journey, if we're going to move into that next phase together or how that will transition, I knew I didn't want to get left behind. It felt very different to be left behind than it did to be part of that process and part of that decision. So that was one of the things that just nudged me to go off and make my peace and find my new adventure.
Can you provide some advice for managing the stress that comes with downsizing process?
I think that managing the stress really does start with communication, letting the people around you that you are working with on this downsize know how you're feeling, right? We all know hangry, like I'm hungry, I am tired, I'm angry. And, communicating what your limits are. So finding finding time when everybody is rested, finding time when everybody's agreed upon how much time they're going to invest in this. Don't expect a 14-hour day when what people really have is an hour and a half. So keeping expectations in line with each other is really, really helpful. And understanding that no matter how hard you try, you will never be fully prepared. On my last day of moving and packing and moving things into my storage, I was still packing up boxes. So it's a transition. If you're truly moving from one space to another, there will always be that frantic push at the end. So, and somehow things always get pulled off.
Yeah, I totally agree. Communication is a huge point. And in your book, you offer some guidance on creating a downsizing plan. Could you share some key steps from that plan for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's super important to check in with what your resources and allies think, right? Are your what your resources are and what your allies think, and find a, a large scale plan. And then once you kind of have an idea of the direction you want to go, kind of narrowing down into the more detailed plans and discussing those choices and those details as you move forward. Then we get into concerns around what is the next step after this. So, for example, if you have a parent moving into an assisted living, understanding what the steps after that would be, right? Assisted living, memory care, things like that is very different than if you're, selling the big family home and moving into an apartment. What's your next step after that? How are you going to transition to the next phases of your life, the next phases after your life? And that work is best done as an autonomous, independent human. So figuring those out before you're, having to address those from a different place with less capacity, possibly less money. And then getting into the logistics and the details, things like leases and packing and just the general transition. So
Thank you so much, Anne. I think everything you shared was so important here. That wraps up another illuminating episode of Wisdom Woman. A big thank you to our guest, Ann Brady, for sharing her valuable insights on downsizing and transitions. We've learned so much today, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling more equipped to tackle this journey with wisdom and grace. If you want to connect with Anne, she has a website. Can you share your website and what they can download for free there?
yeah, absolutely. My website is heyannbrady.com. And at heyannbrady.com, you can find a link to my free resources. A lot of them, I am in real estate, so a lot of those are real estate related. But if you look, you can find where you can download copies of my books. I also have, because I travel the world house sitting, I have a link to my Trusted House Sitters account there. So you can get 25% off of Trusted House Sitters, and I get 2 free months. Hey, you know what? It's a big deal, but it's a fun thing, right? So yeah, you can download those.
I always use trusted house sitters as well. I had like people coming from Hawaii all over. It's really, really nice. Check it out. And if you found today's episode enlightening as I did, please consider subscribing to Wisdom Woman Podcast, where we bring your empowering conversations with remarkable women every week. Your support means a world for us, and it helps us continue to share the stories of wisdom and inspiration. Remember, every transition, no matter how challenged, can be an opportunity for growth and transition and transforming yourself. So, as you navigate the downsizing journey of any life transition, I encourage you to embrace it with an open heart and at the knowledge that you have the wisdom within you to thrive. Stay tuned for more episodes filling with wisdom. Until the next time, this is Betina Pflug signing off, wishing you a life filled of purpose, joys, and endless wisdom. Thank you for listening to Wisdom Woman Podcast. To hear past and future episodes, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast channel. We appreciate your reviews. To give us suggestions for future show topics, please write to us at podcast@witty.tech. If you're interested in having me as your trusted advisor, schedule a strategic coaching session on my website, www.witty.tech.